Hi, I'm Maureen Fitzgerald, and this is an excerpt from my upcoming book called Lean Out. The title of this excerpt is called Stop Trying to Be a Mini-Man. For my entire career, I was told to act more like a man, as an accountant, as a lawyer, as a ski instructor. Although I was rarely told to do this directly, I was often pulled aside by well-meaning colleagues who told me that in order to be liked and to fit in better, I should do things like avoid colors like pink or yellow. I should wear power suits of navy blue and black. I should wear my collars buttoned up and never open-neck blouses. I should stop definitely riding my bike to work and don't show any legs or cleavage. As you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of books on the shelves that tell women that they must behave more like men if they want to succeed. Although this might not be obvious from a title, most books try to convince women that they're much better off if they start looking, acting, and even thinking like a man. The best-selling book, Lean In, by Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, is one similar book of this kind. Although it's a fantastic book and a fundamental start, and I have to commend Ms. Sandberg on creating a phenomenal women's movement which raises very important questions, her book too does not talk about institutional barriers, but instead she chose to speak only about individual barriers. Like many books before her, she asks women to change, not corporations, not governments, and not even media producers who demean and sexualize women. In her preface, she says this, and I quote, "Women face real obstacles in the professional world, including blatant and subtle sexism, discrimination, and sexual harassment. Too few workplaces offer the flexibility and access to childcare and parental leave that are necessary for pursuing a career while raising children. Men have an easier time finding mentors and sponsors who are invaluable for career progression. Plus, women have to prove themselves to a far greater extent than men do." And then Sheryl goes on to say, in addition to the external barriers erected by society, women are hindered by barriers that exist within ourselves. We hold ourselves back in ways both big and small, by lacking self-confidence, by not raising our hands, and by pulling back when we should be leaning in. And the most important thing she says at page 8 and page 9 is this: "My argument is that getting rid of these internal barriers is critical to gaining power. Others have argued, like me, that women can get to the top only when the institutional barriers are gone. This is the ultimate chicken and egg." She says, both sides are right, they are equally important. Unquote. I do not agree that both sides are right, although I would agree that we have to address both sides at the same time. Nor do I agree that both sides are equally important. I do not agree that women should continue to have to make personal sacrifices to fit into a brutal work world. I do not agree that women should gather energy to spend time on both fronts, on themselves and on the institutions. However, I would definitely agree that women will feel a whole lot better if they think that change is within their power. This is the rhetoric that we have sold to women for 100 years. Women will more than likely buy a book that tells them they simply need a few minor adjustments than a book that suggests, like mine does, that the whole world needs a facelift if women are to truly be powerful and free. As I read Lean In, I was also reminded of a book by Gail Evans years ago, a CNN executive who wrote one book basically saying what Sheryl did is that women have to improve, and then years later wrote another book called She Wins, You Win, which basically said that her initial ideas about women's self-improvement were wrong and that we had to deal with institutional barriers. But I have to tell you the truth, I was a bit relieved when Ms. Sandberg chose not to write about the very thing that I had been writing about for 8 years, actually my whole life. And my book, my articles, my blog are exactly the things she chose not to address. There's one final thing I need to say about those writers who continue to tell women that they must keep improving themselves and must start acting like men. The following story explains my point. A few years ago, I attended a talk by a very young 20-some male who told us everything that women do wrong in business. He advised a small group of lawyers that I was part of that women had no idea about how to conduct business with men, and as a result, women were making huge, particularly financial mistakes. We did things like leave money on the table in negotiations and failed to secure big business contracts. He told us that men did not view us as serious or tough enough, and we were actually sabotaging ourselves, and we were sabotaging other women. In light of this sorry state of affairs, he urged us to sign up for his coaching course, which of course taught us how to be more assertive, how to speak more loudly, how to be liked, and a bit more, as he said, cutthroat. Sadly, I watched women line up after the talk for his coaching program. Oh dear. What he had no idea about is that he was talking to a group of women who knew very well about gender bias and discrimination. Because we're lawyers, we understood that laws were designed to keep women out for many, many years, out of politics, out of education, and so on. And laws still do. But more importantly, our practices, our ideas, our institutions continue to keep women out, and we, for some reason, fail to want to look at them. The sad fact that we are all trying to behave more like men is that it actually works. It's part of the reason why I was successful as a lawyer. It works in the short term, but the cost of pretending to be a man is extraordinarily high. Many women suffer in terms of a deep self-crisis and confidence, low self-esteem, fraud complex, etc. Many lose a huge chunk of their understanding of what their feminine essence, and that essence has begun to atrophy over years of pretending to be something that they're not. But it's not just women who suffer. Men suffer too from narrow-mindedness. They don't have the benefit of diversity and creativity that could have been tapped in women. They don't appreciate really, truly what women bring to the table. And it's not men alone, it's the institutions that they live in. Like Henry Higgins in the movie My Fair Lady, when he sings, "Why can't women be just more like men?" So the organizations that are losing women scratch their heads and say, what on earth are we doing wrong? Why can't we recruit more women? Why do women leave in droves? So in conclusion, I ask you these questions. Is it a good idea to teach all women to behave more like men and less like women? And who does that serve? Next, is it a good idea that we assume the masculine way of doing business is the best way and the only way to do business? And who does that serve? And the last question is it a good idea to tell women that they need personal help and not to point them in the direction of the systems that discriminate against them? And who does that serve? The bottom line is we continuously tell women in no uncertain terms that they don't have the balls. And if they want to succeed in a man's world, they must either act more like men or get out of the way. Women will generally be accepted and promoted if they speak like men, dress like men, and walk like men. But this all comes at a huge cost. So my solution is simply to stop telling women that in order to be successful, they must act more like men. Question why we value masculine values and characteristics so much and devalue feminine. Imagine if we told men that they had to start acting like women. How insulting. It might be absurd, but I think it's time to embrace more of a feminine culture in organizations. And I see this happening through the movement of emotional intelligence, compassion, collaboration, and trust. I look forward to helping you create a culture where women would be included and not feel they need to act like men. Thank you very much for listening to this video. This is an excerpt from my upcoming book, Lean Out, 50 Ways to Identify the Hurdles That Hold Women Back. If you want more information, go to my website, www.maureenfitzgerald.com. Thanks for listening.